Hey there, good morning and welcome back here to Just the News AM. I am Carrie Sheffield and glad you're with us. Well, a group of black women are speaking out. Their children were killed in violence and now they are upset about a call to defund police. They say that this is wrong. They say that anyone who wants to defund the police would actually encourage more violence in their communities. And they are organized and a group that has been brought together by Bob Woodson, friend of the show. He organized a press conference with these mothers and they just spoke out. And now Bob Woodson joins us this morning to talk about what happened. Good morning, Bob.
Well, pleased to be here.
So Bob, tell us what happened with this press conference. Who are these women? How did you find them?
I have been working for years with some of these moms who lost children to homicide. I lost a brother at age 29 who was murdered and leaving 5 children behind, and a nephew at 23. So I know firsthand what that's like. And these mothers came to me and said, you know, everyone's talking about the conditions in our cities, but no one listens to us. And while they're talking about defund the police, we want more police, more effective policing, and no one's listening to us. And I said, well, we'll bring you together and give you a voice. And so we hired Sylvia Stone Bennett, a mother who lost her child, and we found out we was a network. So we now have 7 cities where there are chapters of Voices of Black Mothers United. Some of the services they provide is grief counseling for their moms. They take them on retreats, but also they have positive interaction with police. And as a result, they are actually, some of them are actually hired by the police departments so that when there's a murder scene, some of the mothers are dispatched with the homicide detectives so they can be in a liaison with the family, so the family doesn't feel apart. But as a result of these cooperative relationships, we've seen homicide rates, the closure rates on homicides decline, increase rather, because there's trust built between the community and the police and more people are willing to testify. That's just one of the outcomes of what's been happening with these mothers. That's
interesting. And Bob, our condolences to your family for your loss, that you lost a family member to violence. That's very, very tragic. We have David Keene here. He's got a question for you.
Well, I don't know if I have a question, but I will say that by giving a face to these people, Bob is making a very important point. You know, last year, as this defund the police movement began to grow, I think it was Gallup did a poll, and they asked, do you believe that there should be more police on the street, the same number of police on the street, or fewer police? And the group that wanted more police on the street were Black Americans who live in those cities and are the victims of crime. That was largely ignored by policymakers who were responding to these special interests. But what Bob's doing here is what he's been doing throughout his career, and that's he's giving a face to the public policy implications of some of these things. That's an incredibly valuable service.
Well, and that's a very good point that David makes. Bob, talk a bit about that, about the gap here between, you often talk about, for example, white liberals who conceive of these policies, who then go to the media and get the bullhorn, and in some cases, as you've also said, maybe wealthier African Americans who live more in the suburbs, so that the folks themselves who would actually have to deal with these policies, they're the ones who actually disagree with them. Why is there this big gap?
The biggest challenge isn't racism, it's elitism. It's anytime you generalize about a group, it always means those who, and then you talk about resources coming to fix a problem, it always benefits those in the upper income levels of that group. It doesn't go to where the problem is. For instance, 82% of blacks surveyed support increased police. And yet, if you look at the voices that are on television, they're all black elites and white.
Interesting. Where was that? Where was that survey? That 82%.
Pew did a survey.
Yep.
And Gallup did a survey of, particularly Pew did a survey of also what percentage of blacks believe that racial discrimination is a principal barrier to their achieving success. And 62% said sometimes. but it's not the chronic and deep problem that the left keeps pushing. That narrative that somehow Black Americans wake up every day looking for racists.
Bob, what about the fact that we're seeing a spike in crime here in Washington, D.C.? So there's a city councilman who is here in D.C., and he's calling for a state of emergency. There have already been 3 teenagers who have been fatally shot here in 2021. It's a brand new year. You're already seeing a spike. There have been 14 homicides overall in D.C. in 2021 compared to 11 last year in 2020. Last year was the most violent in the Capitol in the past roughly 15 years. And then we're also seeing this in Chicago as well. In Chicago, there were 21 shot, 4 dead over the weekend in Chicago this past weekend. But that was actually down from the previous weekend. At least 21 people shot over the weekend. And the last weekend, it was 31 shooting and 7 dead. This was, perhaps the crease was a little bit because there was a foot of snow that was dumped on the city. Why do you think that the spike in crime that we're seeing in cities is because police are maybe holding back and in some cases getting defunded?
I know that's the case. I've been saying this for about 7 years, that there's a direct correlation between a police nullification, or what some call the Ferguson effect, and crime and violence in these communities, because it means that if the police are going to be accused of racism, then they're not going to pursue crimes as aggressively, and as a result, the murder rate goes up. This happened in Cincinnati when there was an 800% increase in the murder rate in low-income communities, when Al Sharpton and then others conducted a boycott for a year in Cincinnati because of a police shooting of a young Black man. But none of the leaders who organized the boycott were vilifying the police live in the areas where the murders are occurring. And it's the same throughout the country. The people advocating this assault on police, the very fact that the Virginia legislature would propose legislation that would reduce an assault on a police officer from a felony to a misdemeanor, and this person can publicly advocate that and not provoke the ire of his fellow citizens.
Right.
I mean, that's why 62% there's a recruitment problem around the country, and which means that police are going to be delayed in responding to 911 calls.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you, David, because you've been following the conservative movement for so long. Do you think the conservative movement was asleep at the wheel when it came to issues of race?
Pardon?
Has the conservative movement and Republicans been asleep at the wheel when it comes to race?
In a sense, that's true, because my philosophy is the same as Bob's, and that is you treat people as individuals. There's no such thing as a black bloc or a white bloc or an Irish bloc or a Catholic bloc or all that. What you do is you talk to them, and what you find, and this was somewhat exhibited in the presidential and congressional results this year, where blacks are beginning, in many cases, to move to the Republicans on issues. Many black families, are as conservative as I am, and we haven't talked to them.
Right. All right, David, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned, folks.